Since you have been through the entire ladder, I wonder if we can focus in on the communication you need to do as a knowledge worker. A lot of the things we hear that people struggle with, I also struggled with, was this idea of articulating your work, uh, really being able to not just let the work show for itself, but be able to bring some visibility to it. So I'm wondering, depending on the level you're at, let's say individual contributor to manager to some more director, executive levels, how does communication change? How does communication stay the same? How should someone think about how they communicate at work?
So, like you said, communication is extremely important. The work doesn't speak for itself. You have to speak for the work. You have to represent your work very well, and you have to represent yourself very well. Especially in large corporations, I think it's super important to manage perceptions, and communication is a very key part of that. Because, like, realistically, there's so many things happening that to be able to capture people's attention in a very large ecosystem. So, going back to the different levels and what the communication requirements are, as an individual contributor, simplistically speaking, an individual contributor is somebody who is an expert on an activity or a domain. Be it, let's say, an engineer or a program manager, they focused on a particular technology, a particular feature, or a particular program. So, there, the communication requirement for the person is to be able to be very clear, to articulate what they're doing. So, the communication needs to be functional, needs to be clear, and comprehensive yet concise. Speaking of managers, managers typically are managing a bunch of individual contributors. They are dealing with a whole bunch of stakeholders. The communication requirement for a manager is to be able to give clear instructions to the team, give direction to the team, give clear guidance to the team, and with their peers to be able to share relatable context so they can compare, contrast, and in the larger scheme of things, like form an alliance with different teams and just be effective cross functionally. And with the higher ups, the managers need to be able to tie their work back to the mission of the org, and to be able to show how the work the team is doing is connecting to the larger scheme of the org. That's how the role translates into the communication requirements. And speaking of, let's say, leaders or executives, so they are the ones who are defining the direction and the culture of the org or the business. They're setting the tone pretty much of everything that's happening. So for them, it's very important. I think the softer aspects become super important for leaders and executives. They need to be, super authentic. They need to be evoking trust of the people they work with, and they need to have that vision that can bind everyone together, that is inspiring for people. So if you see, like, what I've detailed are essentially different aspects of good communication. So for a good communicator, you need to be clear, you need to be concise, you need to know your audience, you need to connect through your communication, you need to be able to inspire. And based on the level and the role, there are different aspects that become super critical. But also, I think, as one progresses through the levels, these skills are additive. Like, a manager needs to be able to know how to describe the work, and a leader needs to be able to manage different stakeholders and be able to tailor their communication accordingly. So it's kind of honing different facets of communication, realizing what the requirement is in that context, and again, like, trying different ways of doing that, and making it work for you and for others.
I think others might have noticed this as well. You're great at taking big concepts and breaking them down, usually into threes. And of course, this is what we talk about on the channel, frameworks. How do you simplify, clarify your ideas with others? Do you have any go-to frameworks that you've collected throughout your career?
Cool. There's so many things that come to my mind. So for communication, I think the framework I use is that effective communication essentially comprises of two things. So, skills and confidence. In terms of skills, I think there are four key skills that are required to be a great communicator. The first is preparation. The second is to be able to contextualize the communication. Third piece is storytelling. And finally, the fourth piece is ability to summarize. Let's go through each of these very quickly. So preparation is super important, right? You need to have a point of view, and that conviction around your point of view will help you massively with your communication. Number two, to be able to contextualize. So being able to understand like what this particular communication is about. Is it a practical communication where you're trying to solve a problem? Is it a social communication where you're trying to bring people together, trying to inspire people? Is it an emotional communication where you're trying to help somebody out, where you're trying to show that you understand their point of view and give them a certain emotional comfort? Typically, like in work situations or in public speaking, it's a combination of all of these. But tailoring, I think, depending on the context, is something, it's a useful skill to have. And then comes storytelling. I think we're all, we love stories. And stories are comprised of three things: visuals, emotions, connection. So I think if you think of how we talk, like to our friends or family, we just talk in a very different fashion when compared to how we talk, let's say, in a work setting. And the difference is that when we talk to our friends and family, we just being very authentic. We speak from our hearts, and normally the way we speak is we tend to bring things to life. We help the person like see what we saw, and there's a lot of emotion in how we describe things, in the way we describe, and because it's coming from a place of connecting with who we're talking to. Whereas in work settings, I think a lot of us lose out on this skill. We believe that we need to be professional, we need to be like we need to appear a certain way. Of course, I'm not saying be super chatty, but to be able to bring the storytelling in whatever you're sharing, I think that makes a ton of difference. And finally, I think summarizing. The attention span, especially in today's age and time, is very less. So it's important to be able to make sure that the your communication lands. And the way to do that is to summarize very effectively, or ask some questions to clarify understanding at the end of whatever you shared. So I think these are the skills that really help with powerful communication. And the second pillar is confidence. So confidence itself is a skill, right? Because it's very learnable, and with practice you can get better at being confident. But if I have to break down what confidence means in communication, I would say it's about two things. One is authenticity, and second is again connection. Authenticity, I think, if you see like powerful communicators, they just have this ability to sound like themselves. They do not try to sound very professional or different. They just sound like regular people, and because they are being vulnerable, they're being themselves, they also give the listeners, the audience, and whoever they're talking to, the room to kind of like go inwards and be themselves and be comfortable. So I think that makes a ton of difference, because people don't remember the facts, but they remember how they felt. The second piece is connection, right? So a lot of times I think, we, especially if somebody's shy, we can think a lot about like, what do I look like in this community, when I'm talking to people, what do I look like, are they judging me? And it's a lot about what I come across as, vis-a-vis what am I bringing to the table, what does this person want. So I think it's important to be able to really be in the moment, be open, really see people, and to try and see how can I add value to this conversation. That's really, the purpose of communication. Ultimately, communication is not about sharing things. It's about connecting. It's about, what you get through to somebody rather than what you are broadcasting, what you're sharing, right? So I think that gets accomplished through confidence. So yeah, I think these like four set of skill sets, and two pillars of confidence are what I keep in mind to be a powerful communicator. Like if I have a communication situation, like a quick early on, let's say if I had to do a public speaking engagement, I would ask myself that are these are like some checkpoints I have to be able to gauge if I did a good job.
Communication is about connecting, not just sharing. I love that you bring that humanness to this. And on that note, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Check out Radha on LinkedIn. I left the link below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.